Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. When we hear the name Winston Churchill, well, our minds often jump straight to that heroic, cigar-chomping leader, right? The one who rallied Britain through the darkest days of World War II. He's this colossal figure.
Absolutely, yeah. Etched in history as a wartime titan, that's the picture.
But what if that picture, that singular perception, barely scratches the surface? I mean, he lived an extraordinary 90 years. So today, our mission is to unpack a really fascinating source, a YouTube podcast transcript from Fur's podcast. It's titled PYMK EP77 Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of England, Economy, War, Literature. We're going to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge about Churchill, really pushing beyond just the battlefield. Our goal here is to give you, the listener, a kind of shortcut to being truly well-informed about him. We'll uncover some surprising facts, connect his journey across military, politics, economics, even literature. This isn't just about the war. It's about a man who seems to have lived multiple lives in one. So, where do we even begin with such a grand story?
Well, it's striking, isn't it, how often his life gets boiled down to just those 5 years leading Britain in World War II. But like you said, the source highlights this remarkable 90-year span. He was Member of Parliament and MP for, get this, around 60 years? Not continuously, mind you.
60 years?
Yeah. And served in about 5 different ministerial positions. Plus, he was on the front lines in 3 British Empire conflicts before fighting in 2 world wars. It's just an incredibly rich tapestry.
And his network, you mentioned, that was really expansive. The source brings up people you wouldn't immediately link with a wartime leader.
Yeah.
Like the economist John Maynard Keynes.
Right.
And even the fashion icon Coco Chanel. What does that sort of breadth tell us about him? More than just name-dropping, right?
Oh, definitely. It's an excellent point. These connections, they really speak to Churchill's immense curiosity and his ability to just move across different worlds, intellectual, political, cultural.
Exactly, it seems.
Pretty much. He wasn't just confined to his main role. He was genuinely engaging with the leading figures of his time. And that undoubtedly broadened his own thinking.
And maybe the biggest surprise for many, you mentioned it comes early, he won a Nobel Prize in literature.
Yes.
How does that fit the usual picture?
Exactly. It's not just a fun fact, though. It highlights something crucial about him. His ability to use periods of, well, political downtime.
The wilderness years, they call them sometimes.
Precisely. To turn those times into periods of... But it's also key to remember, his life wasn't just one triumph after another. There were big defeats, electoral losses, times out of power. Those shaped him just as much.
Right. So what does this all mean for you listening in? It means this deep dive is going to explore all these different sides. The military adventures, the complex politics, those influential economic decisions, and, yeah, his surprising literary side. By the end, you should have a much more complete, more nuanced picture of Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. Okay, so to really get this journey, we need to go back to the start, his formative years. He was born in 1876 into a wealthy family right in the middle of the Victorian era, a time of huge British power, but also lots of change.
And despite that aristocratic background, getting into the military wasn't automatic. It was actually merit-based. He had to pass this tough exam for the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. And, interestingly, he failed it twice before getting in on the 3rd try.
Really? 3rd time lucky.
Yeah, it shows a certain tenacity right from the start. It wasn't just handed to him.
And he chose the hussars for his branch, didn't he? Light cavalry and attack unit, which was, different from the usual British focus on the Navy.
That's right. The French often went for artillery, Germans infantry, British Navy. He chose the cavalry. Seems he wanted to be right in the action.
And his early military career reflects that.
Oh, definitely. Very active. He served on the front lines in the British Raj, that's India,
right,
fought in the Hades War in Egypt against Sudan. But here's a really surprising bit from the source. During the Boer Wars in South Africa, he wasn't just a soldier, he was there as a military reporter.
A reporter, wow.
Yeah, and he got captured, became a prisoner of war, which is pretty astonishing for someone with his background, and then he famously escaped.
That's incredible.
It really highlights that early interest in writing alongside this daring, adventurous streak.
So from reporter and escapee, he jumps into politics. Pretty young, too, only 26. Started with the Conservatives, 1900 to 1904, but then made a big switch. Joined the Liberal Democrats for 20 years. That's quite a shift early on.
It is. And his rise was quick once he got into Parliament. He became Home Secretary at just 36.
36. That's young for such a big job.
Very young. Under Prime Minister Herbert Henry Asquith. It showed he grasped the political game early on.
Okay, so Home Secretary, then comes the first huge global conflict, World War I, and he's in another key spot. First, Lord of the Admiralty, head of the Navy.
Right, under Asquith again. And this is where his strategic thinking about Germany really shows. He immediately saw Kaiser Wilhelm's naval expansion, the Kriegsmarine Gesetz, the naval law, as a direct threat. A serious one.
And his response.
Famous response. For every one German ship built, Britain builds two. Simple, bold, he got the importance of naval power crystal clear.
And this strategic mind also led to something pretty unexpected, didn't it? The origins of BP, British Petroleum.
Ah, yes. That's fascinating. Churchill saw that future wars, future navies, would need oil, not just coal.
Ahead of the curve there.
Definitely. So he convinced Asquith, the PM, to basically nationalize a major oil company, Anglo-Iranian Oil, by buying a 51% stake.
Why? Just to secure supply.
Exactly. To reduce Britain's reliance on foreign companies like Shell, it was about national energy security way back then. Preparing in peacetime was his philosophy.
Shows real long-term thinking.
Yeah.
But not all his WWI plans worked out so well. Gallipoli.
No, Gallipoli.
Yeah.
That was a major failure. His plan, an invasion of the Ottoman Empire, go through the Dardanelles, capture Constantinople, combined Anglo-French forces, including Anzabe's Indians, Canadians.
But it went badly wrong.
Disastrously wrong. They were defeated by forces led by Mustafa Kemal, who later became Ataturk, founder of modern Turkey.
And Churchill, as the planner, took the fall.
He took significant blame, yes. As First Lord of the Admiralty, the buck stopped with him, led to his demotion, a huge blow to his career. There was even that mocking phrase, I came, I saw, I capitulated.
Ouch. So he gets demoted to what?
Minister of Munitions, basically overseeing ammunition supplies. A big step down from running the Navy strategy. Shows how serious the Gallipoli fallout was.
And another twist. After the war, years later, he becomes Chancellor of the Exchequer, Finance Minister.
That's right, 1924 to 1929, under Prime Minister David Lloyd George this time. Another sharp turn in his career path.
And this is where he clashes with Keynes, the economist.
Exactly. Keynes famously ripped into Churchill's policy in an essay, The Economic Consequences of Mr. Churchill.
What was the fight about? What did Churchill do?
Okay, so after WWI inflation, Churchill decided to put the British pound back onto the gold standard.
Why? What was the thinking?
Prioritizing financial discipline. A strong, stable currency linked to gold. Classic orthodox finance, really.
And Keynes disagreed.
Strongly. Keynes argued for the opposite government intervention, pumping money into the system to stimulate the economy, create jobs. He thought Churchill's gold standard move, while aiming for stability, would choke off growth.
So austerity versus stimulus. A debate we still hear today.
Absolutely. A fundamental clash of economic philosophy.
Right. So after being chancellor, he hits this political low point, loses the election in 1929 to Labour under Ramsay MacDonald, spends years just as an MP out of power.
The wilderness years again. But what's really interesting here, if you connect the dots, this period, often seen as a failure, was actually vital for him.
How so?
Because he threw himself into writing really intensely. He wrote his Memoirs of the First World War, a big biography of his ancestor, the Duke of Marlborough.
So he used the time productively.
Immensely productively. And this writing did two things. It helped people understand his strategic mind, his thinking, and it kind of kept him in the public eye, built his reputation outside Parliament. It arguably prepared him for what came next.
He gets back into Parliament in 1935, under Stanley Baldwin, but wasn't immediately welcomed back into the inner circle, right?
No, not really. There was still some mistrust, perhaps from Gallipoli, perhaps his switching parties earlier. But this is when he starts sounding the alarm. Loudly.
About Hitler.
Exactly. From 1933, when Hitler took power, Churchill just constantly warned about German rearmament, especially the Luftwaffe, the Air Force under Goering.
But people didn't listen.
Mostly no. He was dismissed as, well, paranoid. A warmonger, even. People just didn't want to believe another war was coming.
Understandable, maybe, after the horrors of WWI.
Perhaps. And then you have Neville Chamberlain taking over as PM from Baldwin. Chamberlain genuinely seemed to believe Hitler's ambitions were limited.
Even after Germany annexed Austria, the Anschluss in 1938.
Even then, Chamberlain pursued appeasement, believed he could negotiate.
But Churchill was still warning behind the scenes.
Oh, yes. And this shows his political savvy. He met privately with Chamberlain, but he made sure the meeting was formally minuted. Recorded.
Why? Just to cover himself.
Essentially, yes. To have proof. Evidence that he had warned Chamberlain if things went south. A shrewd move.
Which brings us to Munich. September 1938. Chamberlain flies back, waving that piece of paper.
Proclaiming peace for our time after meeting Hitler and Mussolini, a moment of massive but ultimately false hope.
Because Hitler just ignored it.
Immediately. Broke the agreement, invaded the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, then, September 1st, 1939, Poland. And that was it. World War II began. And remember the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, that non-aggression deal Hitler signed with Stalin's Russia just before invading Poland? That showed how calculated it all was.
And all this time, Churchill had been on BBC radio, right? Trying to wake people up.
Consistently, using the radio to get his warnings out directly to the public.
So the war starts, Poland is invaded, and Churchill, he's back, appointed First Lord of the Admiralty again in 39.
Yep. Back running the Navy. And then, when Chamberlain falls ill and resigns, Churchill becomes Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, May 1940, leading a nation already at war, facing an existential threat.
What's the first thing he does? Such immense pressure.
Unity. He forms a small 5-person war ministry council. Crucially, he brings in Clement Attlee, the leader of the Labour Party, as his deputy PM.
A coalition. Conservatives and Labor working together.
Exactly, a grand coalition. National unity was paramount. Politics put aside for survival.
And what stands out most about his leadership then, for me, and I think for many, it has to be the speeches.
Oh, absolutely.
I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Just iconic. Power.
Yeah.
They weren't just words, were they? They genuinely rallied people.
They really did. They set the tone.
Yeah.
No sugarcoating the reality, but total defiance. And he needed that spirit immediately because the first massive challenge hit just 3 months into his premiership.
Dunkirk.
Dunkirk, May 1940. The German advance through France was terrifyingly fast. They used Pervitin, basically methamphetamine, fueling their blitzkrieg.
So they advanced much quicker than expected.
Way quicker. Covered ground in 3 days that Allied command thought would take 7. British forces were trapped.
And Churchill ordered the evacuation, Operation Dynamo.
He did. An incredible, desperate gamble. And famously, it wasn't just the Navy. Hundreds of civilian boats, the little ships, sailed across the channel to help rescue the troops. Over 338,000 soldiers brought back. A disaster turned into, well, a miracle of sorts.
But the threat wasn't over. Next came the Battle of Britain. Operation Sea Lion, the Germans called it. Their attempt to control the skies before invading.
Right. A massive air campaign. Bombing raids, dogfights. Britain's survival hung in the balance.
And Churchill's strategy here, what made the difference?
It was quite ingenious, actually. Less about sheer numbers, more about logistics. He focused on the speed of repairing damaged British planes and getting pilots back in the air quickly.
Turnaround time.
Exactly. Faster turnaround. That constant pressure eventually allowed the Royal Air Force, the RAF, to win air superiority. It was crucial. No invasion could happen without it.
And through all that, more speeches. We shall never surrender. We shall fight on the beaches. That absolute refusal to give in.
Indomitable spirit. That's what people remember. And ultimately, he led Britain and the Allies to victory over Nazi Germany, VE Day. He was, as you said, on top of the world, a global hero.
Which makes what happened next just astonishing. The 1945 general election, Britain has just won the war in Europe, Churchill is the conquering hero, and
He loses, in a landslide, to Clement Attlee's Labour Party.
it seems unbelievable. How do historians explain that? How could the public reject him right after victory?
It is jarring, but the thinking, as the source suggests, was kind of pragmatic. The public mood was essentially, okay, the war's won, thank you, Mr. Churchill, but now we need something different.
A different leader for peacetime.
Exactly. The best prime minister for war might not be the best for peace. We need to build a new Britain. People were exhausted by war, tired of empire, and they wanted security, social reform, a welfare state. Attlee promised that. Churchill still represented, perhaps, the old order and wartime footing.
And Attlee, sometimes called English Lynn, apparently, represented a very different socialist vision.
Very different. And Attlee's government was transformative, hugely significant.
What did they actually do?
Well, major decolonization. India and Pakistan gained independence in 1947. Other colonies followed. He established the Commonwealth of Nations, this looser association, and domestically the really big one, establishing the National Health Service, the NHS.
The NHS. Still central to British life today.
Absolutely. And nationalizing key industries, coal, railways, utilities. It was a fundamental reshaping of British society towards a welfare state.
So Churchill's out again, another wilderness period, 1945 to 1950. What does he do this time? Back to writing.
You guessed it. back to writing. And this is where we get that aha moment connecting back to the Nobel Prize.
Ah, right. The prize awarded in 53.
Exactly. He won it primarily for his historical writings, especially his huge multi-volume memoirs of the World Wars, WWI and WWI.
So the irony is, losing the election gave him the time to write the books that won him the Nobel.
Precisely. These periods out of power, while maybe frustrating politically, were incredibly fertile for his literary career. Though sadly, by 53, he was too old and unwell to go to Stockholm to collect the prize himself.
But the political story wasn't quite finished. He comes back again.
He does, a remarkable comeback, becomes prime minister again in 1951.
At what age? He must have been quite old by then.
77. Astonishing, really. One with a narrow conservative majority.
77.
Yeah.
And then something else major happens early in that term.
Yes, in 1952, King George VI dies, and his young daughter, Princess Elizabeth, becomes Queen Elizabeth II.
So Churchill, the veteran statesman born in the Victorian era, becomes the first prime minister for this very young new queen.
Exactly. Imagine that dynamic, this towering historical figure, steeped in tradition and war, guiding a 25-year-old monarch stepping into this immense role.
Their relationship has become almost legendary, hasn't it?
Yeah.
People talk about how much he taught her.
They do. Apparently, it could be a bit tricky initially, the age gap, the strong personalities, but reports suggest he took his duty to advise her very seriously, taught her a huge amount about politics, government, the world, really helped shape her understanding of the role.
It's a relationship that still captures the imagination. You see it in popular culture.
Oh, definitely. Like in the Netflix series The Crown, their early meetings are a big focus.
Right.
And remember, the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony, that animated statue of Churchill bowing to the Queen. A really poignant image showing the enduring significance of that bond.
So he served as her first PM for a few years. How did his second premiership end?
His health started to decline, understandably. He retired in 1955, handing over the leadership to Anthony Eden.
And he lived for another decade after that.
Yes. Winston Churchill passed away in 1965 at the age of 90, bringing an end to, well, just an extraordinary life.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's so clear, isn't it? Churchill's 90 years were like a grand play, just packed with different acts, so much more complex, so much more multifaceted than just the wartime hero image.
Absolutely. Soldier, journalist, politician shifting parties, minister in multiple roles, strategist, economist, writer, Nobel laureate. It's quite a list.
His impact was just immense, not just for Britain or the empire, but really for the whole world stage.
Mm-hmm. You know, if we think about that bigger picture, William Shakespeare's line, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Well, you'd have to say Winston Churchill was undeniably one of the most prominent, most significant players on that stage for a very long time.
Definitely. So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Think about how Churchill's periods of what looked like failure or downtime, losing elections, being out of office, those wilderness years.
Yeah, those periods where he turned to writing.
Exactly. How those times were actually pivotal, moments for growth, for different kinds of achievement, leading to things like that Nobel Prize. What does his full story, the ups and the downs, tell you about resilience, about leadership, about how people adapt or don't adapt across vastly different eras? There's so much there. We really encourage you to delve deeper into any part of his life that caught your interest today.